Welcome to Pencils with Erasers, hosted by Danny Sully Sullivan. Get ready for a wild ride as we bring you the untamed and unbelievable stories from the trading floors of America, both on and off. Buckle up for an unparalleled journey into the dynamic world of finance. Without further ado, let's dive into the extraordinary tales with Sully.
Welcome to this week's episode of Pencils with Erasers. We are lucky enough to have Greg Rosoff here. He's a 15-year American Stock Exchange veteran turned upstairs trader. Welcome to the episode, Greg. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks so much for having me.
Welcome, Greg.
Of course. I'm looking forward to hearing this because I have such a soft spot for the AMEX.
So yeah, it was a magical place. It really was. Everyone had such great camaraderie, and we all had an enormous amount of respect for each other. One of the things that I miss in today's world is the daily interaction with like-minded people. And we used to disagree on so much stuff, but what we did agree upon was your word was everything about you. If you didn't keep your word, if you tried to renege on a trade, I mean your reputation was ruined instantly. And so basically it was filled for the most part with a bunch of ultra trustworthy, wild individuals, who for the most part were out there, eating what you kill is, the term that we used to use most frequently, because basically an independent floor trader had capital, whether it was, their own capital or partially their capital, but you were working for yourself. And if you had a bad day, that was money out of your pocket. And if you had a good day, that was money in your pocket. And there was no other way to do it, right? Very few people worked, as traders for a salary. It was all about, making the money, and that was the bottom line.
Yep, that's a great way to put it. Eat what you kill, because that's exactly what we did, right?
Yep.
I never heard that before, that expression before, Greg. So yeah, that was pretty cool. But I just want to warn the viewers that if Greg does slur his words, you will notice in the background of his where he's. Where he's sitting, that there's plenty of refreshments behind him, and I'm only kidding, but that's pretty cool. I was just telling Greg how cool that is. Not quick question. First question. Let's just start from the beginning. How did it all start with you? Did you go to college? Did you know someone to get on the floor? How did you get on?
Yes and yes. It goes back to when I was 15. My parents got divorced then, and I was a rather moody, unhappy kid, and a typical kid. And I was spending the weekend with my father, who I was much closer to than my mother, and we were sitting on a beach in Fire Island with his girlfriend. And my father, amongst other things, was a terrific bridge player, which is a card game, and he taught me how to play, and I took to it like a fish to water. And I just, all of a sudden, the rest of my life was literally turned upside down. I just, consumed bridge. I had to play, I had to read, I did whatever I could. I spent any waking hour I could that wasn't, doing something productive like school, playing bridge.
No kidding.
And I became really good really quickly. I won my first regional bridge tournament when I was 16. I was written up in the New York Times.
Wow, I've never heard anybody say this before. Like, I've never heard anybody say that that bridge became their oxygen. Like, that's fantastic.
It is.
And
I mean, it's a sign of intelligence to be able to play cards that well. Good for you.
Well, there were a whole bunch of us down on the floor. It wasn't just me.
But I mean, to hear you, like, to have you take such an affinity to that so young.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It really kind of saved me, because I was basically on my own from 15 on. I had very little parental supervision, and it really kept me out of trouble. I can only imagine what would have happened to me if I didn't have something like.
I wish I found bridge. I wish someone would have introduced me to it then.
But I generally, was taken with bridge, and as I really got into it, it was about that time that there were two world-class bridge players. Ronnie Rubin was a bridge and backgammon player. Michael Becker was a bridge player, and they were world champions, and they came down to the floor and started trading and making a lot of money, and they hired other world-class games players. And I had a friend who was brought down by his brother-in-law and his cousin, and they were world-class games players, and they brought him down, and he started doing well, and he asked me when I graduated college whether I like to trade options. And the little subplot to this is that my father also liked to dabble in options. Like he liked to buy and sell options on things that he wanted to speculate on. And so he taught me a little bit about options. I was like, oh, this is great. And then when I found out that bridge players and world-class games players, were making a living trading options, I was like, aha, that's for me.
That's cool.
I love
And that's
that. What a
exactly how I
great
got down to the
introduction.
floor. So when I graduated Rutgers in January of '88, I started training to come down to the floor. In July of '88, I was 20. I just turned 23, and I became a member. And I had backing from Michael Becker and other traders on the floor, and off I went.
Cool. Let me ask you this really quick. How do you become a champion in bridge? Like, obviously, well, not obviously, is it done over the internet? Are you guys heading to Vegas like they do in poker? Or
So back then, they held tournaments all over the place, all over the United States, all over the world. There's an organization called the American Contract Bridge League. And basically, the only thing you get to win when you play in these tournaments is called master points. And it's basically a ranking of how many, how long you've been playing and how well you do in these tournaments determines how many points you win. And that's, there's nothing else. It's
money,
all about,
no purse,
no,
nothing like that. And how high did you get up on the list?
I'm still accumulating.
Wow.
But it's really more. It's less about think about compiling, right? You think about baseball players. There's Pete Rose, who had 4,256 hits in his major league career, but you wouldn't think of Pete Rose as the same type of player as Babe Ruth or Mickey Mantle, or guys who not only got a lot of hits, but hit a ton of home runs and really carried their team. And so bridge is kind of like that, where you could play forever and compile a whole bunch of master points, but it's really the players who consistently win the major tournaments that are thought very highly of.
Okay,
so it's all about winning tournaments and being above everyone else when you compete.
Okay, I was just curious. I've never heard of bridge. I mean, I've heard of bridge, but never heard of like bridge tournaments or bridge anything.
Right.
So in today's world, it's much less about bridge because of the internet. Far fewer people are interested in actually sitting down and playing cards or playing backgammon. But poker, because of its transparency and being able to understand it, because it's a simpler game to learn, and because it's much more popular in terms of the cash prizes in Vegas and the televised tournaments that go on, that has become the game of choice for a huge swath of people into gaming and gambling. And bridge is much less about that, but it's a more intellectual game for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I think it's absolutely brilliant. You bring up backgammon, and I don't know if they had it on the Amex as well, but on the New York, we had a section of the trading floor where the old timers were sitting. We used to call it Jurassic Park. And they would break out the backgammon board. And I used to love to go and sit and play backgammon with them. Like it was like to be invited when it was a slow day to go play. I always felt so, I know, I always stood a little taller when Mr. Tamucci would ask me to go play with them. But it really was, they really took it very serious. And it was one of those things that it was hard. It wasn't just a regular game.
I had no idea how to play backgammon. But when I came down to the floor, in the lunchroom every day, there was a backgammon game going on in the members lounge. And it was not just an ordinary backgammon game. Like I would say 3 of the top 10 world ranked backgammon players in the world were down there playing backgammon
Yeah.
for money. And so for the first 6 months, I just sat there and watched every single lunch period. And then I started to play with them. And
Yeah.
when you're playing for real money against some of the best players in the world, you get pretty good pretty quickly, or you're going to lose your shirt.
It gets very heated too. Like it gets.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Aside from being silent, I think you could hear a pin drop in the room. But yeah, it was intense, right?
And I'll
Yeah.
speak for Philly. We did the same thing on the Philly floor. There was gammon going on.
Always.
Up in the FOC offices, on the floor. Yeah, backgammon was, I mean, really probably the #1 game board on the Philly floor too. So it was a lot of fun. I loved playing backgammon. I really did. Okay, so tell us about the first day. You walked on that floor. Well, how did you feel when you just, again?
Oh, I was 23 years old and scared out of my mind when I first, when I got my badge and first started trading. But it took a few trades.
They brought you right onto a seat. Did you clerk at all during the?
No. I just stood
Really?
and watched, and asked questions, and then they just gave me a seat and off I went.
Crowd.
Wow.
What crowd?
So my first crowd was called Kimberly Clark.
Yeah,
And
sure.
They make Pampers and other household disposable items, Kleenex and those types of products. And it was a takeover stock at the time. I think Ron Perlman was rumored to be interested in buying them out. And so sometimes the options got very volatile. And I struggled at first, for sure. The first few months, it was a struggle, but then I caught on and I figured it out.
Yeah.
And,
Sure.
Well, can you give me a definition of struggle or a couple definitions?
So when the stock started to run and the volatility went crazy in the options, and I don't want to get too complicated here, but
No, get complicated.
when the stock starts to move one way or the other very quickly, the prices of the options become elevated because you have the right to buy or sell the stock. And given that the stock is moving, it's more of an opportunity if you own the options. And so the premium on the options expands as the stock starts to move. And I didn't quite understand how quickly things could move. And so I struggled with, pricing the options and how to actually participate in trades that were good in the crowd, because I was brand new and I didn't understand the nuances of dealing with the different personalities, dealing with the brokers, how to, have a smooth transaction. It takes some time. Being a new person down there, no one wants to help you because you're competing with them, right? And so no one's going to step in and say, hey, you might want to do this instead of that. You just got to figure it out.
Sure.
But it was it was a good thing that I'm very stubborn and and strong-willed, and I was like, I'm not failing at this. This is going to happen for me. And so I kept at it and just figured it out. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, for sure. I wouldn't trade it for a minute.
Do you remember, well, first of all, let's go back. You just said that the other fellow traders didn't help you out. I got a chuckle out of that. How true is that? And,
Yeah. It reminds me of the way you described it was, if you ever saw that movie, The 13th Warrior, way back. I don't know if you ever.
I did not, but
it's an Antonio Banderas movie when he enters a tribe and they all speak this language and nobody wants to, let him into the circle or give him anything. And he's just sitting there and he's completely lost. And then over a couple of days, all of a sudden, he just learns the language. He just picks up there. Yeah. And that's basically what you have to do. It's like entering a new tribe, right? Yeah. Everybody, it's like you said, eat what you kill, and trying to navigate in all these words and definitions and a lingo that you just don't understand, and these numbers and the way things are moving. And then all of a sudden everything just starts to click. You just look at the next person who's supposed to react, and they do, and you're like, oh, I get that. Yeah. It's a feeling, isn't it? When you finally get over the hump, you're like, wow, you're in.
Greg, I think you're the first guest that didn't start as a clerk and then moved. Yeah. You're the first one. You were thrown right to the wolves, right from the
yes. I was just thrown right to the wolves.
Options are a different animal.
To me, that's kind of if you were trading my capital, I don't know, man. That would be kind of dangerous. That's all.
Well, Michael Becker had some harsh words for me at first.
Well, Can you remember that? Can you share that conversation? Like, do you remember?
So I had a really rough day one day in Kimberly-Clark, and he looked at me, he goes, "So what were you thinking here?" And I
Oh, is
explained,
that the worst?
"What's that?"
That's the worst when it's just like when they just basically call you like dumb right to your face. You're like,
Oh yeah.
oh,
And
I know. I was.
he goes, and what were you thinking buying all these deltas right at the close? I said, well, look, I had them for sale. I made a bid and he hit me, and then the bell rang. He goes, "You cannot do that as a newcomer, even as a veteran. You should never be doing that at the end of the day. You have to limit your size." And he goes, "And you're lucky I'm not firing you right now, because you have no right to be trading my capital and doing these types of trades. I'm not happy with you." And
It's a wake up call.
oh, it was a
He
wake
was
up
saying
call.
that to the mirror is what he's saying, because he knows he's the one who hired you and put you in that spot. So he's really speaking to himself if you think about it, right?
Well, so there was another end of this, and that was the people who were going to hire me originally. They got caught in the crash, and the day before the crash, I think they had something like $7 million in their account, and the day after the crash, they owed Bear Stearns $2.5 million.
Wow.
Yikes.
And so they basically went to Michael Becker and said, "We promised Greg we were going to bring him down. Can you and someone else, fund him, and we'll do all the training and legwork." And so Michael really had nothing to really. I was not in his inner circle at first, and so he had no problem looking me in the face and telling me
I
that he
gotcha.
was very unhappy with me. And
Now it makes sense.
yeah.
Wow. That must have, I mean, and having that happen at the end of the day and the bell rings, now you're getting on the bus and going home and that's sitting on your head, must have been a hard to get up the next morning. You probably up very early, but it's probably hard to get in the next morning. Like, oh.
You know what though? I was such a stubborn, thick-headed human being at that point. Like I just was, this is not going to set me back. I'm going forward with this.
Good for you. Well, that's the attitude you needed, right? That's the Wall Street way.
What was your size when you first started with your bid and offer? Like what were you up? 5 up, 10 up?
Oh, I was 25 up.
25. Okay. 25 up right out of the gate, huh?
And people tend to not understand how significant that is. 25 up, each option represents 100 shares of stock, right? So you're 2,500 shares of stock up on every single market that you're making for a broker. And some of these guys, they're willing to run you over. They just don't care.
No.
They're there to execute orders for their customers, and you're there to provide liquidity for them.
And my example was 5 to 10 up. You know what I mean? Because I thought that's about maybe 1 up when you first go into the crowd. The
other thing is that my group of people, they were premium sellers. They did not want to own options, and so being a premium seller just immediately put you at more risk than you could own premium, and you're paying decay on a day-by-day basis. But when you're selling premium, any move in the stock and you're just sitting there scrambling, and for an inexperienced trader to be short premium, like I really got my life lessons trading options out of the way very quickly. So by the time I turned 25 or 26, like I was really a confident motherfucker. I really was.
Yeah.
I was just, and I had, I'm not a huge guy, right? So I'm 5'8". At the time I was, I don't know, 190, 195 pounds, something like that. I was stocky. I still am, but, I was not a big guy, but I had no problem getting in people's faces and just telling them off. I was just always, it was always my personality. Like I just was not willing to be stepped on by anyone.
You were in the right place for that. I mean, my dad was right next to you, the same thing, same size. You're right. Like, but the personality made you think they were 7 feet tall.
That's right.
450 pounds, right? It didn't matter. It's what's up here. And that's what's most intimidating about guys down on the trading floor. And I don't think a lot of people realize just, how intelligent so many people down there are. Like,
oh yeah. Oh, if you were not able to think things through and be mentally strong, you were gone so quickly. Like, the people around me, they were not only like great businessmen, but they were just super intelligent and willing, the ability to think things through so quickly.
Oh yeah.
And here's the other thing. The ability, most of the people down there, their simple math skills are just off the chart, right? When I left the option trading world and became a financial advisor, I used to tell people when I was on the hedge fund desk, my math skills, they were average, maybe above average. When I went to go be a financial advisor, they called me the human calculator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just perspective, right? It's with the group of people that I was always with, their super simple math skills were just off the charts, crazy good. Like the ability to add and subtract numbers in your heads, the ability to take and the other thing was before decimals came along, everything was in fractions, right? And so your math skills had to be that much better to do all the fractions in your head, right?
Yeah.
Eights minus,
It's true.
3/8 minus 3/16. So, you just got to be able to do it like that.
Oh yeah.
Just we're not getting in on the trades.
We weren't allowed to really use that much. We certainly didn't have computers. So, I mean, when you would flip that paper over and you would do your leads, if you were off by, a couple hundred here or there, it could destroy a career. So you had to make sure that you were right on the mark all the time.
Yep.
So like, can you share a moment in that, at least in that crowd that, again, it was a heated exchange with another trader during a particular, like really busy day.
I had so many of them, I can't even.
Well,
Any particular one stand out?
just stand out that really, like, you can still still look at it today and remember it like it happened yesterday.
There was one time where the stock was running and I was really short, and some guy, a broker, came in and offered like, I don't know, 400 calls in the middle of the market, and I immediately said buy them. And like literally half a second after I said buy them, I had 4 other guys say buy them, and I looked at them all and I said, sorry, I took them first, they're mine. And they started like going off on me, and I just looked at them and I said, get the floor official. Everyone in this crowd heard me say buy them first. Clearly, you guys were you guys were late. They're mine. And it just became really heated, really, really harsh. And I just did not back down. And curses started blowing from my mouth like, water from a water fountain. It was just really ugly. And
You didn't give up any?
No.
Good for you.
Nope.
And did it go your way?
I was just about to ask that.
Stock continued to run. I really needed them, and I was not giving them up.
Good for you. So you did well. You made out on it. Holding out helped.
Yes.
And did that particular trade, because as Ann and I, we've heard a lot from past clients, like, people remember. That's one thing that traders remember. Did any of those two, I don't know, I'm going to say 2 or 3 other traders, did you guys, have problems in the future because of that particular trade, or was it more?
Here's the thing, right? We all had our clicks. When I was trading Intel, which was, the stock I traded from, let's call it 1992 through 1999, generally. In that period, Intel was the busiest crowd on the floor, and it was just always, anywhere. When I got there, I was, I think, the 10th or 11th guy in the crowd, and a couple of years later, we were up to like 120 people in the crowd, and it had that many going forward until I, was no longer in that crowd. But there were always clicks in the trading crowd, and so if friends of mine had actually wanted some of them, I definitely would have stepped away from the crowd and given some up. But when people who are just not in my clique, who I really don't care about, I could care less what they think about me. And I also had, the biggest and baddest people as my friends, like people who were really quick and good, or B, huge, mammoth human beings, or maybe a combination thereof. I took care of them.
Right.
So no one was willing. Right.
That helps.
There was a method to my madness.
So wait,
right?
really quick. So basically, I would compare that to like a hockey game where you have the star that's 5'7" and
That's right. Exactly.
pounds, and you got Dave Schultz protecting you the whole time. So not too many people are going to be picking on the kid as long as the enforcer's there. So
So now that worked out in your favor. Do you remember any of like any errors that went against you where you were like,
I remember
aside from
there was a huge broker. His name was Steve Tobias, and Tobias had the biggest order. Him and there was another house that had huge orders, but basically he had the biggest orders on the floor from Goldman Sachs. That was his
the machine.
Yeah. And Tobias was, he came in with real orders, and he generally had a lot of the other side. Like, he knew how to work orders as well as anyone. He was he was the guy
Smart.
that you needed to pay attention to. And he had a huge order, and I was paying attention to him, and I was trying to work the stock. And as soon as my stock got executed, I said, buy 100. And he goes, sorry, Susquehanna already took them in front of you. I'm like, I didn't hear a thing. And he, I saw the Susquehanna trader standing right next to him. So he basically very quietly said, take them. Didn't announce it to the crowd. And I went nuts. I'm like, he has to announce it to the crowd that he's buying them. He just can't secretly be in your ear and say, buy them. And I got ruled against, and it hurt.
That stings.
Yeah.
That's not cool.
Nope.
Happens all the time, but it's never cool when that happens.
but
That's not right.
It happened all the time. It just
Yeah.
Oh, it really
get away with it. You get caught. This guy got caught, obviously, but I've my brother was a broker for like 30 years in the 10-year note options on the Board of Trade, and all the stories I've heard, and the one key word you said, Greg, is click. It's one that is so true,
Really is.
Again, let me ask you this, were you and again, just, I'll just ask you, where you stood in the Intel crowd, did you stand next to the biggest brokers, in the pit that didn't leave the crowd, or did the brokers?
So no broker actually stood in the crowd outside of the spread brokers, and they generally had small little, it was very rare that a spread broker had more than 100 lot. And in Intel, we consistently got 500 to 5,000 lots, right? And so generally, the spread brokers who stood in the crowd on a day in and day out basis, I mean, I always try to help them out and always had a good relationship with them, but I never, paid too much attention to orders that they had, because it generally was prudent to make sure you watched who was coming in and out of the crowd. Like if you had a Steve Tobias or another couple of the big brokers that were known to have the huge orders, that's who you want to pay attention to.
Did you get along with Tobias?
I tried. He was tough. I think I had a decent relationship with him. I had a really good relationship with a few of the other brokers, and you can't be friendly with everyone. Like, not everyone's going to love you, and you have to learn and understand that. Like, you just can't be friends with everyone. Not everyone is going to love you and your personality. And as long as you're honest and true to yourself, and make sure you stick up for yourself and have the respect of the specialist and the traders around you, that's basically what you can hope for. You're never going to be able to please everyone, especially in a very competitive crowd like that. Like, otherwise, you're just not doing yourself justice, because if you are friendly with everyone, that means that people have run over you, and you just can't let that happen.
Hey,
I agree.
Just really quick, you got the next question, Ann. Just really quick. Did Tobias and the specialist, did they get along?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That's where I was just thinking, yes, that was going to be your answer.
I'm sure that was a click of their own.
Exactly.
So now in this scenario, you get with Tobias having Susquehanna in his ear, and I think you did the right thing, having a floor official come in. and it didn't go your way. But has there ever been, were you ever involved in a situation, or pretty much, I guess, I mean, I would say no, but, or if you ever saw a situation where there was something shady going on, where it went down and it didn't go in Susquehanna or Tobias's favor, where someone got in like big trouble for it? Because I know in the New York, we had a bunch of incidences like that. But that's kind of, you know, that's a form of front running. How do you, but it, you know, they got away with it, but I'm sure many didn't.
I think generally the biggest brokers were given way too much leeway in terms of, you know, the amount of ethics that they had to display. And I'm not saying that Tobias wasn't ethical, but what I am suggesting is he could get away with more.
Right.
Somewhat, I don't want to call it shady, but, you know, he could get away with a little bit more than some of the less respected brokers on the floor. Like, basically everyone knew that his orders were, you know, the king of the hill, and, you know, he had the biggest orders, the best orders, the orders that you wanted to be in on the ticket if it was a good one, and you wanted to make sure that he was not going to exclude you. So you had to
play nice.
You really did.
Yep.
Yeah, let's put it this way: the specialist is the sheriff in town. I mean, that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And then you have the deputy, and the deputy is the Tobias. So, you know, usually the sheriff and the deputy get along.
Yeah.
I mean, great names for it too, right? Like, he's got a great name for it. It's like an old school like episode of something. It's like my husband called it when he called it the Wild Wild West when he worked down the AMEX, and he was down there for a long time. So I mean, it stands to reason. So now, where's Tobias now? Do you know?
I have no idea. I haven't heard from him in years. And I'm sorry about my dog. That's what
I
happened.
didn't hear. You know what? I was just going to ask you guys if the fan in the room, I told you guys earlier, I'm in my son's fraternity room up here, so I had to put the fan on. But
Yep.
if it's too loud, please tell me.
I can't hear anything. So, okay. So, how about, okay, we've gotten a couple questions about heated arguments and that stuff, but tell us about your best day ever on the floor.
Ooh, that would have been January of 2001. I had like, at that point I was trading a bunch of internet names, and I had like, I don't know, 6 or 7 different positions, and some of them were really large, and I had 4 brokers with 4 different positions, all coming to close out the positions that I put on with them months ago, and the markets were so wide, and they all came to take out their positions basically on the bids and the offers. And because I had the other side of them in a huge way, they were just, it was like they were handing me huge amounts of money.
It's a good feeling, especially in the
I
beginning
could
of
not have
the year.
imagined what was going on. But on that particular day, I don't know, I made, you know, $250,000, $300,000.
Wow, did you skip home that day?
Amount of money for an independent floor trader. It was just, I was like, wow, holy, I just couldn't believe it.
Oh man,
You know, that never happened, never. But that one day, it was January expiration, and, you know, January was just a huge open interest because, you know, all the leaps, which is the multi-year options.
Wow.
You had these guys who wanted to roll them or, you know, move, you know, get out of their positions, and it was just like Christmas. It really was.
And that's like
Christmas
13 years into your career there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so for anybody who thinks it's overnight, we're just going to go down to Wall Street and start making
Oh,
cash.
no.
It doesn't happen overnight. And
No.
I think that's something that people don't realize. Like,
No,
you
it was
were
a
patient, you
daily
worked your butt
grind.
off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just a daily grind. And if you didn't have the wherewithal and the mental toughness, you were gone.
That's amazing. So now, who would you say was your biggest mentor? Was it the same person from the day you started to 2002, or did you have a couple throughout that time frame, those 15 years?
My biggest mentor, so the traders who had, you know, gone bust in the crash, and I'm going to give a little story before I go further with this. So there is a saying on Wall Street: if you're going to go broke, make sure you really go broke, because if you know, if you lose a little bit of money and you owe the clearinghouse, you know, a small amount of money, they're going to kick your ass out and just say goodbye. and you're going to be kicked to the curb, and no one's going to hire you again, or you might get another job, but basically no one cares. But if you lose a lot of money, the clearinghouse is going to make sure that you're back in business so that you can make back their money. And so when the guys who were originally going to bring me down to the floor, when they owe Bear Stearns $2.5 million, they got put back in business. And they made it all back and then some. And one of the three of them, so I had a really good friend who, I knew from Bridge, who brought me down to the floor, and his name was Michael Golden. And Michael brought me down to the floor, and Michael and I we kind of parted ways in terms of our friendship. It's complicated, so I really don't want to get into it. But his cousin Marvin was one of the brightest guys I've ever met. And Marvin is no longer with us, but he was like a father figure to me. I loved him. He was just the nicest, most decent man I have ever met. There was never a doubt in my mind that he was someone who I could trust, who would always give me his honest opinion, who was just always so nice and decent to me. And he was like, and I think anyone who knew him felt the same way.
How nice is that?
Oh, he was just the best. So Marvin, and I'll tell you a little story about Marvin. So Marvin, a couple little stories about Marvin. Marvin, when he was in high school, he bet a huge amount of money with different people, that he would score 800 on his math SATs, which is a perfect score. And he did. He was
great.
Just that type of guy. And, world-class games player, just brilliant guy.
He bet on himself. I love that.
And his cousin, Michael was probably like, I don't know, 5'9", probably weighed about 145 pounds soaking wet. Marvin was probably about, I don't know, 5'10" and weighed 250 pounds and was just a big, hulking, strong man. He was overweight, but he was just a beast of a man. So the two of them, it was, you think of the movie Twins with Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. That was Michael.
I was thinking odd couple there.
Yeah. But Marvin, no problem telling you exactly how he felt, but just an absolute sweetheart of a guy. So when I was really young, so we're talking a couple of months into my trading career, there was a stock called Gould. And Gould was a little tiny stock, but it was a takeover stock. And I remember it was in another post, but right next to where I was trading. And the specialist, his name was Jerry Galkin. And the reason you would know that is that his son died in 9/11 also.
Stephen, right? Was that his son's name, Stephen?
I don't know. I didn't know his son, but I know that Jerry's son died in 9/11. But we're going back now, 13 years before then. Jerry was a specialist in Gould. And some guy came in and offered, the slightly out of the money calls at a 1/16 of a dollar, a teeny, that, were expiring in a couple of weeks. And they were just on the book. And I turned to Jerry and said, I'll buy them. And so he let me buy them. And it was a 50 lot. And I went to Marvin and I said, Marvin, what do you think? I just bought these, calls in Gould for a 1/16 of a dollar. It's a takeover stock. I said, what do you think? And he looked at me and he goes, straight-faced, Greg, we sell lottery tickets. We don't buy them.
That's awesome.
I remember it like it was yesterday. It was just one of those things that just has stuck with me ever since.
The wit of the guys down there it was incomparable, right?
Yeah.
That is awesome. I love that. So now, was he consistently your mentor through the whole 15 years, or were they interchangeable? Because really, when you find one, you stick with that one, but sometimes every now and then you get another diamond in the rough. Was he your only one?
I would say that if I had a situation, I would go to Marvin first.
Marvin for everything. That's so nice. I love that. I'm sorry he's passed on, but I'm happy that you have all those memories of him.
Yeah, no, he was, and if you ask anyone on the floor who knew him, they all say the same thing.
That's so great.
Greg,
That's so great.
Do you have someone in the crowd that you followed?
Me.
Like at the beginning of your career? No, I mean at the beginning of your career?
That's
a good response too, just so you know. That was good.
No.
Nothing
I
like
mean,
that?
generally, I never followed anyone. I always was very confident in my ability to parse a screen and knew what I wanted to do. I
Okay.
always had a game plan. I always, looked at certain things and what I was trying to accomplish and knew where my risk was. And I was a pretty confident trader. Not always the best results, but and maybe I was a little too strong-headed in that regard. Maybe I should have
No way.
flexible in my thinking, but that just wasn't me.
So now it's 2002, I think you said. What made you make the transition from Amex guy to trader or to financial advisor?
So, well, that was in 2012 when I
12. I apologize. 10. I'm taking away 10 years of your life. I'm sorry.
yeah. So when I
12.
went upstairs to the trading desk at Gargoyle, you know, it was a complicated relationship with the partners on that trading desk, but I got along with all of them. And the problem, of course, was at the end, high-speed algorithmic trading made our jobs literally obsolete.
Right.
So the CEO, who I'm still working with today, by the way, but he came to me in 2010, and he said, "You know what, Greg?" He goes, "Things have not been great here. Your results have been mediocre the last year, and it's not you, it's across the desk, but
Right.
you're still young enough that you should probably look to do something else because I don't see a trading desk being here in a couple of years." And
That was very nice of him to give you a heads up like that. A lot of people just gave you your box and was like, the writing's on the wall. Here you go. For him to give you the option.
he was, I still, I am now working with them, and they're now a private equity firm, and I'm one of the 5 people that goes into the office
Wow.
every Wednesday, and we do something completely different, but it's wonderful working with them. They're, the 4 guys I work with, they're brilliant, and I've known them all for 35 years, and they're just salt of the earth, great guys. And what more can you ask for, right? I mean,
Yeah, honest to God, that's huge. And to be able, that kind of goes back to what you started with when you said, your word was your bond and your reputation is all you have.
that's
The
right.
fact that these guys stay true to themselves and to you for so long that you're still there is a testament to that.
But so began my shift out of trading in 2011,
Mm-hmm.
and being a financial advisor seemed like the smoothest transition in terms of the amount of studying and work I'd have to do to get up to speed to be able to do it. And I kind of liked it, but there was a lot of different things I wasn't thrilled about with the profession. And so a few years in, my biggest client, they asked me that they said, "We're unhappy with our CFO. We like working with you. Would you be our CFO?" And so
Wow.
in 2016, I became their full-time CFO. So that's actually what I do now. I do fractional CFO work for a bunch of different companies, and I work with
We'll get wait.
private equity firm that I
We're
just described.
gonna cover that at the end, but I want to go
Okay.
back because you gave us the your best day. How about what was your worst day?
May 30th, 1997.
Okay,
I
continue.
was short premium in Intel, and it was trading at $164 the night before, and it opened up at around 140. And that was about $350,000 down the drain of my own personal money. And that really
Wow.
That was your personal money too?
all mine.
Wow.
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
that's a tough one there, Greg.
That was a tough pill to swallow.
Oh my gosh. Was
So
that
now, what was the rest of your day like? Like, if
Yeah.
that's what you walked in on the opening to, what was it like at noon?
Well, it got worse only because, and I literally, I sold a bunch of stock on the way down. Like it had opened at around, I think one, the pre-market trading, I sold like 20,000 shares at around 148 or 149, and then watch it go down below 140. And I was like, wow, I just saved myself a ton of money by dumping 20,000 shares, almost $10 higher. And then the stock started to rally like huge. And we had a system called AutoX, which auto-executed trades, but it wasn't because the screens weren't keeping up with the price of the stock. We were selling, shares of stock, deltas, as I'm sure Dan, and I'm not sure, Ann, if you know what a delta is. I'm sure you do. But
I've heard the term, but I'm so not familiar with trading options. I never did
So a
it.
delta is a representation of how much stock you own. So if you own an option that has 100 delta, it'll move dollar for dollar with the stock. If you have an option that has a 50 delta, it theoretically will move 50 cents, for every dollar that the stock moves. So essentially, as the stock is ripping higher, the screens weren't updating. So we were selling deltas with the stock dollars lower that we were getting notification of. So we were essentially losing money hand over fist by having to be on this automatic trading system.
Gosh.
And the AMEX wouldn't turn off the trading system, even though they knew that it wasn't keeping up and that the traders were just getting steamrolled, because they made a promise to the upstairs trading firms that that they would allow this to occur. So basically, we were getting stolen from the brokerage house customers.
Yeah, right.
And so I think each trader in the crowd wrote a check for between $25,000 and $30,000 just by being on AutoX that day. So it was just like,
wow.
Yeah, it was just awful.
Was there any other traders that you could remember had a worse day than you?
I really didn't ask, nor did I want to.
Okay.
I knew that a whole bunch of traders had a really
at that
bad
point,
day.
you're just.
Yeah, but I was immersed in my own misery. I didn't want to know about anyone else's misery.
Yeah.
This is going to be a tough question. Just this for the viewer that just has never worked on the floor, never, no experience. Can you explain the actual feeling that you have when you're having a day like that? And it's not just like an hour day. It's, it's a whole day feeling. Is there any way you can describe it?
It's pure misery. There's no other way to describe it. Like I was, and you have to have some mental fortitude, because you have to stand there and still try and, make money, and accept the fact that you're starting with this huge loss that you're going to see at the end of the day on your trading sheets. And it's real money. It's money that, is in my account. But you have to suck it up and just move on. Like, there's really no other way to describe it.
No,
I kept thinking to myself, gosh, this is just the world's worst. However, it's not like I got hit by a truck. It's not like I'm losing a limb. It's not like I have to go to war or something. So just suck it up and get in there and do your best. And that was the attitude. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to go home and cry.
I bet. I remember hearing a lot of
the other thing. We had dinner plans at Morton's that night with a whole bunch of folks.
Oh, did you go?
Oh man.
Yeah, I went.
You weren't paying that night, that's for sure. But I remember hearing a lot of brokers say it's only money. And I remember other ones looking at them and they'd be like, yeah, it's only money. But to your point, they're not losing limbs, they're not going to war. So yeah, it's only money, right?
I think those two words right at the beginning, Greg, did it justice. Pure misery. You couldn't.
Yeah.
So again, just sticking with this one trade, how long did it take you to make it back? Do you remember the next week, next months, where? I mean, was
this
been a long road or short road to get it back?
Oh, very long road.
Okay.
So here's the God's honest truth in terms of, at that point, I was already talking with one of the traders in the crowd about starting a partnership and going upstairs. And we had already decided that we were going to do this. And so in October, so this was May 30th, so basically the end of May. So 5 months after that, I had made back a chunk of it, but not all of it. And then we decided that we were going to raise some capital and put in a chunk of our own capital and start an upstairs operation and sit in a booth next to one of the busiest wirehouses on the floor. And so we did this, and we were next to Heights Partners. And that was arguably the worst decision I ever made in my life. We, as much as I thought I liked my business partner, he was
buyer's remorse. Was it instant?
He made me look open-minded and level-headed. Like he was so stubborn and never admitted a mistake, and just wouldn't unwind any position that wasn't working out for him, and just would take on deltas and never sell them. It was a nightmare. And I lasted almost a year with him, and that cost me probably $500,000 as well.
I was gonna say, which was worse, the pure misery of May 30th or whatever the date was, May something, or this sounds
this over an elongated period of time was much worse, because
it sounds
I with
that's
him
brutal
every single day. And I not only did I lose a ton of money, but I now hated this guy. Like I really personally hated him. It was just so god awful for me.
I bet it sounds awful. That must have been just brutal.
And I thought he was. There were certain things about him that were just. He was a misogynistic, low. He didn't treat people right. He was so off in terms of his color and the way he talked to people, and the sexist, narcissistic attitude. But I thought that being such a great, I thought he was a great trader, and that we would do really well together. And by the time everything played out, I was just so done with him. And so the single day of losing that amount of money on May 30th of 97 was, the painful one-day loss, but the misery over the extended period of time with him, just, it almost broke me.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell just by your tone and your facial expressions, you're having a flashback, right now. I'm starting to feel the pain for you now.
Yeah, you feel defeated. Like it's a defeating feeling. So now you ended that. When did you dissolve that partnership?
So November of 98.
Okay.
And then in January of 99, I came back down, and I raised some capital, and I started, trading again. And then I got approached by another friend of mine who was going to start an operation, and he was going to be starting, let me back up. My friend, he got approached by guys who had a huge amount of capital, who had operations on another floor, and they were actually looking to build an operation so that they could sell themselves to Knight Capital, which they did. And unbeknownst to me, the only reason they were buying a book and starting this operation was to sell themselves. And they asked me to come on to start this operation and be number two behind my friend. And and I said yes, and then that wasn't for me either. So I spent a few
that was a
months
different animal. When Knight started doing, I remember when Knight was like the it place in that time frame, and a lot of people from my firm did the same thing. They got together and everybody wanted to go there. Everybody rushed to them for some reason.
So I did that after only being back on the floor as an independent floor trader, I think 6 or 7 months in. And looking back on that, that was another mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I left that very quickly, only a few months in, and I raised more capital, and I got back with the guy who I'm ultimately still with. He funded me and got me back on the floor. with the idea that I bring someone else, that was part of his group with me. And while I did really, really well, and that was part of the, January of 2001 day where, month where I, absolutely crushed it. And that one day on January expiration where I made all that money. The unfortunate part about that was that I had not only my backers that I had to, pay, but I had to split my profits with this other trader who didn't make a dime. So
The arrangement, no matter.
yeah.
Wow. And can I ask you something just out of curiosity? You're saying raising capital. Let's just go to this last one. What was the amount that you raised to get back on the floor?
So we're now talking late 1999. I think it was $500,000.
Okay, so that's what, there you go. Okay, I was just wondering what the, average or whatever you want to call it. I had an amount in my mind, and it was a lot lower than that. So, okay, so then that one doesn't work out. Is that the end of the floor career? Was that your last hurrah?
So the thing is, I had made so much money over the course of between late 1999 through January of 2002 that I'd still done really, really well, even though my partner got half of whatever I made because he made nothing. And my, the people who got, who had the capital that gave me the capital to get back up, they got a huge chunk of it also. But
Greg, got to ask, was it 50-50, 60-40?
The capital got 30%, and we each got 35%.
Okay, so and then you had to split. I'm sorry, I'm not laughing. You had to split that 35 with the gentleman that didn't make a dime.
Yep.
Jeez.
But listen, I have no regrets.
No. I'm just.
It was.
But still,
I could have basically been stubborn and said, no, I'm doing this on my own. But I thought that he would do okay. I didn't think that he'd make nothing. Like the floor was just great at that point. There was so much money being made, and it really. He was a great guy, and I felt horrible telling him that I could no longer be in business with him when I left. But I couldn't just continue to support him.
I understand.
Right. I mean, that's fair. That's, I think, logical. And I don't think anybody would frown on you for feeling that way. That's just
and the God's honest truth is for let's call it a little over 2 years that we were together. I mean, he took in well north of 7 figures.
Wow, you carried him. You did.
I
you were very nice to him.
I absolutely crushed it. Like I was in top form those 2 years. Like I was just killing it.
Okay,
good for you.
We'll end the question on this particular. Did you guys? I mean, again, stupid question. I know it's a stupid question, but it's going to be asked anyway. Did you have like a 2-year contract with the guy, or a 1-year contract, or just a gentleman's bet?
Yeah.
Or gentleman's agreement.
Gentleman's agreement. Yep.
Oh, oh man. Okay.
That's a testament to your ethics and your morals. That's why you're still relevant today in that industry, because that's what you built your foundation on. I think that's outstanding.
The one thing that you always have, no matter what, is your reputation. And once you tarnish it, it's gone.
Yeah, it takes you 30 years to build it and 5 minutes to ruin it, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. And so, there's no amount of money that's worth me ruining my reputation, no matter what.
I love that.
Cool.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I couldn't agree more.
We're getting close to an hour here. So do you want to just, like, again, do you remember your last day? Do you remember the it's coming to an end type of feeling?
Well, so after 9/11, right, my ex-wife was pregnant with my first daughter, and she was also downtown. And so when, when my friend who had started a trading desk, a few miles from where I lived, literally, and that's what he was doing. He was on the trading desk every day, and I had a whole bunch of friends who were already on his desk. I said, you know what? And that's when I decided to break away from my other partner who was not making anything. And I asked Chuck, I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't continue to carry him. Can I come and trade on your desk? And he said, yeah, absolutely. And so that's when I made the move in January of, 2002, because, my ex-wife was pregnant and I didn't want to go down to the floor anymore. And, there was,
I don't blame you.
the whole downtown was just completely different after 9/11. And,
especially the AMEX. The AMEX
Right.
got destroyed. Like
Yep.
that was no place to, it was, the quality of life was just miserable down there at that point.
And so, that's what ultimately brought about me leaving the floor and going upstairs to the trading desk.
Okay.
But we don't quantify you as one of those upstairs assholes though, because you went to a desk in Jersey. That's what we call it. I always used to give my husband grief when he went up on Citigroup's desk. I'm like, oh God, you went from being like a really cool floor guy and just ruined it by becoming an upstairs asshole. Like, what is that? So that's always been like a joke in our house. But being that you went to a small or shop in Jersey that's close to home, you did it for quality of life. You win.
Yeah.
In my upstairs, like Ann's is a lot better than mine, believe me. I always say if I'm at a bar and to the left is an upstairs trader and to the right is a floor guy, I'll say hi to him.
Right.
But 99% of my conversation is to the floor guy.
Right.
Just more in common.
Yeah, I would say that even though the upstairs traders got, the quote unquote the
Payday.
majority of the respect from the Wall Street world, the floor traders were way more they were way more talented as traders. Like, I'm not saying that they were smarter, but they knew how to survive. Like, I just there was a survival mode. There was a street smartness in their ability to navigate the peril of what Wall Street was willing to dish out. Right.
I agree with you. And to your point about saying that, like I always say that floor guys always had second jobs. And maybe you didn't have a second job, but your bridge, the way that you were so dedicated to that, everybody did something else down on the trading floor. Very rarely would you find somebody who worked on a trading desk that had that much dedication to something else. It just seems that way to me.
I stood next to a guy, and I'm going to use his name. His name is Steve Weinstein. And Stevie, as brilliant a guy as you're ever going to meet. And he's probably one of the top 5 bridge players in the world. And
the dedication to something else they're able to be masterful at both.
He was
crazy.
I stood next to him every day in Intel, and he was a great trader. And then he would go to all the nationals, and he got paid huge dollars to play in the national bridge tournaments as well. Like, it was a second job to him.
Yeah, you have to be super bright to be able to be that masterful at 2 extremely high pressured jobs.
And he's still a professional bridge player to this day.
That's cool. I love that. And you still play regularly as well?
I do. I love
That's
it.
great.
Got to get those points, Greg.
I do.
We just decided we're teaching all our kids to play poker. We're teaching all of our kids, even my daughter who's 13, we're teaching all our kids to play poker, and we're going to have a couple nights where we're playing poker night. And I think that's going to help them tremendously in life. So,
one of the things that occurred when, my brother, who I, wanted to bring down to the floor and train, but he just didn't feel he had the right personality. He wasn't as outwardly obnoxious and stubborn as I was, more mild-mannered, more corporate. But he got a full dose of what the floor was like, and he was taking notes about how my ex-business partner that I told you about, who I had a huge problem with when this was back in '98. He, this guy was just so obnoxious and rude and loud. And so my brother was writing a whole bunch of satire on business life. And he wrote a whole book of poems. And one of the poems he wrote was basically about, it was called If I Became a Traitor. And it was based on, traders that he saw down the floor, including his brother. But a lot of it had to do with my ex-business partner. And so I'm going to recite this one for you because it's just
I'd love to hear it.
It's so relevant to what the floor was actually like.
Oh, please do.
And so it goes something like this. If I became a trader, here's exactly what I do. Instead of using gel HA, I'd slick my hair with glue. I'd stamp my feet. I'd eat raw meat. I'd fill up all the missies. I'd curse and moan and throw my phone at idiots and sissies. I'd be an ass in public. I'd brag loudly about my money. I'd dine in fancy restaurants and call my waitress honey. I'd buy fast cars, hit nudie bars, consume conspicuously. I'd put on a show wherever I go to exhibit the greatness of me. And these are just a few of the things to which trading would make me entitled. Because trading has perks. You can act like a jerk. You can let your ear frolic unbridled. For traders, you see, interpersonally can't be shackled by social convention. Unlike other slobs working meaningless jobs, traders needn't pay rules much attention. So till I can trade, I'll be courtly and staid and wait for my opportunity to rant and rave and misbehave with absolute impunity.
That's fantastic. I can't wait to, you got to send that to me. I want my husband to read that.
He said the same thing. I go, Greg, because I heard it before, but I heard it on the phone. I'm like, you got to say this on the podcast. Actually, I think Greg said that. And I go, you got to send this to me, man. So that's awesome. Well,
that's fantastic. I love that. That's, you know what? You could either, it's actually interchangeable. It's either down on the trading floor or somebody who's in the mob, right? Like, that's brilliant. Is he still writing?
I don't think he does that type of writing, but he actually started his own agency and is CEO of this agency out in Seattle. And then he owns it, and so he's writing marketing campaigns for some very big companies, including work for the Gates Foundation.
Well, that doesn't surprise me that he's doing that well, because that was outstanding. And for someone to not work on the trading floor and have that much insight as to the personalities,
exactly,
with such a what's the word? Casual flair. Because if you didn't work down there, you were a casually viewing or like voyeur to it through their brother. To capture the essence of it so well, I think that's brilliant. It's no wonder he's doing well.
So we have two questions we ask at the end, and I'll let Ann ask her question and then my question, and then we'll call it a day. How's that sound? And then you can turn around, get a glass, and take 8,000.
I was going to ask you about your background. I didn't know if it was one of those ones that comes with the app, or is that real? Are those all wine bottles behind you?
This is a real wine cellar. It is my best friend's wine cellar. He lives in West Palm Beach. He used to live in Franklin Lakes, where I used to live with my ex-wife.
Right by me.
And
I'm in Ridgewood. I'm right here where you were.
But his was just extraordinary. And then he moved down to West Palm Beach and he built this.
Wow.
This is 4,000 bottles of every must-have wine that was ever made. It's just...
It's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you were my neighbor for however long. I'm just in Ridgewood. I'm just around the corner from
where you live. I'm in Mawa.
Oh, you're still in so you're still my neighbor.
Yeah.
I love where we live. I think everybody is so nice. I grew up here though. I grew up in Hohoka, so I'm literally half a mile from where I grew up. So, but so on this podcast, one question that we love to ask is, what's a phrase that you still use in your everyday life that you learned on the trading floor that people around you are always like, they have no idea what it means, but it's absolutely perfect for what you're trying to capture? Like I always say, my example is, I always say, when we're talking about dinner, when I see friends, oh yeah, we got to get that on the tape, and they have no idea what that means. But
I like that one.
I thought about when you said "eat what you kill" earlier. Like that's a definite form.
Yeah, I would say that would be the phrase that I use. Where I definitely still use that phrase. I eat what I kill, right? And yeah. I generally still do. I don't like working for other people for the most part. I mean, I do, but I do fractional work. So basically, when I work, I charge, and when I don't work, I don't charge. And so that's basically, I would say, you eat what you kill is what I would say.
Okay. And
I love that.
if
But I would also say this, and I have to give credit to my friend Mike Akampor, who I used to also stand within the crowd, and his favorites.
I remember that name.
So Mike used to, whenever someone asked, Mike, are you hedging your position? He would look at them and go, a hedge is something a dog pisses on.
Yeah, that's good.
I never heard that.
And when and I love that so much. And when someone asked me recently, he goes, "Are you going to hedge that position that you have?" I looked at him and I said, "Yeah, hedge is something a dog pisses on." I just love
That's good. I can't wait to find an opportunity to incorporate that into something I'm doing, because it's going to stick with me.
And
I love those.
And we'll take total credit for it too. Did you think of that?
Ah,
You know what I mean? Sure, I did. Okay, last question is, if you could do it all over again, would you?
In a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. The greatest job of all time. And I can't believe that I actually got to do it as my first job out of college at age 23, and was just given a badge and given some funding and saying, go do it. Like I look back at that, I'm like, how could they do that? But they did it. And I couldn't be more thankful for that. It was just, as an awkward, shy, somewhat angry young man, who was able to grow and learn so much and evolve into the person I am today. And so much of it is because of that experience on Wall Street and, being a trader on the floor. It was just wonderful. And, I think back to that, and it allowed me to grow so much so quickly and have real perspective. And I heard this saying recently that basically said, it goes like this, that when you get old, the great thing about getting old is that you become the person that you were always meant to be. And the floor allowed me to become that person in a much accelerated pace than otherwise. Like, it just allowed me to be who I am and, have the confidence and the mindset to go out and do what I did and what I still do, and, be the confident human being that I am today. I'm not sure I would have reached the point that I have without the floor, for sure. Like, the floor is just, what a great place. And yeah, I would do it again in a heartbeat without thinking twice.
That's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. And I'm thrilled to be able to say that, we have the similar like histories and background, because I think that watching people go from point A to where they are now, wherever they are in their alphabet, they always go back and say the same thing, that the floor defined who they were. And they're such good people. And I like being cut from the same cloth as good people like that.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Greg.
So thank you so much for coming on. I loved listening to your story. You have a great story, and I wish you all the luck in the future. It sounds like you're still doing it, and sounds like you're still crushing it, which is extremely impressive.
Thank you so much. And thanks so much for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
At least, and we're not going to, Ann and I are definitely not going to forget this, but I'm going to ask you for that poem. I don't care if you have to write it out again or something. You got to.
I'll write it out for you. I'll email it.
What I might do, this is just
or just record it and send it to me.
Oh, either way, but I'd like to have it written out, because what I'm thinking is, when the podcast ends, I've got a couple announcements. I might just have that to be the last slide.
It's fantastic.
Last, and you'll know what I mean. Have you seen one of our podcasts yet, Greg?
I have not.
Okay, and I'll send you one. But again, you'll know what I mean. I would need your permission, but at the end would be a slide and have that poem.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sort of gives me the goosebumps right now, just so you know. I don't want to sound like a wuss now, but that gave me the goosebumps. So, okay. Thanks again, Greg. And, I'll see you around. And that was it. That was pure joy. I had such a great time.
Thank you again,
guys.
Greg.
Okay. See you guys.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Message from Daniel Sullivan, CEO at Mogator Media Capital. At Mogator Media Capital, we are dedicated to transforming creative and financial dreams into reality. With a deep understanding of both finance and storytelling, we excel at financial investment and crafting compelling narratives. If you have an idea centered on wealth, money, or anything financial, we want to hear from you. If you're interested in investing in a unique entertainment business model, we want to talk to you. Our approach is distinct. With strong relationships with top production companies, always seeking the next Wolf of Wall Street, MMC exclusively focuses on financial genres, making us the go-to destination for your ideas and investments. When it comes to financial content, we're the ones who can bring your concepts to life. On the financial side, we know how to grow your investments in the entertainment market. Our business plan guarantees a risk-free investment with a guaranteed premium. Sound too good to be true? Let us prove it to you. Visit our website at www.mogatormediacapital.com, and in the upper right-hand corner, select either content or investment and fill out the short form that fits your narrative. Join us at MMC, where finance becomes the star of the show.